How do we go about criticizing our government in a meaningful way that is not just tearing down, but also productive and builds up? This is the question that I want to take a look at and see if we can find some answers to. I don't think I will solve all the problems with being able to speak out against the government and actually make corrective actions and solve how to do that perfectly. I have no wild dreams about being able to do that in a 15-minute book review, but I do think we can move in the right direction and learn a few lessons from John Locke and his book, Two Treatises of Government, because this is a great work on looking at the problems that face the government of the day, looking at the arguments on the other side, analyzing those, and then putting forth your own argument and building up on your case as well. And that's what I think we could use a little more of, is taking the other side seriously and arguing against the other side, but then going forward and producing a vision and put forth that vision in a way that is meaningful and builds up, because that, I think, is what we lack most of all today. And that's what I think John Locke brings in a unique and beautiful way. And so that's what we're going to be discussing with today. But I want to remind you that if you're interested in the conversation of our generation, subscribe on YouTube. And if you're liking these book reviews, there's a playlist there of all the book reviews. I think they're all on there, but there might be some missing. But regardless, you can find a lot there. You can also go to conversationofourgeneration.com/library to get a good look at all the different book reviews categorized by the type of book, so philosophy, politics, history, literature, etc. And that's a great place as well to find more about these books. And then you can also subscribe to the podcast, leave a good rating and review. That really helps with popping it up on the charts and getting it to more people. And then last thing, you can go to conversationofourgeneration.com/subscribe to get premium access to the courses, which is coming out right now on the Golden Mean, going through the Nicomachean Ethics, or Nicomachean Ethics, not sure how it's pronounced still, but we have 4 classes posted on that right now. At least this is coming out in a couple days, so maybe I'll have time to get another one posted up before then, but we'll see. And then I also have you'll also get my book and access to the Discord community and other premium features going forward. And you'll be locked in at that $5 rate. So, if prices go up as more and more content comes out and there's more value behind it, these early people who are supporting me, I want to make sure that I stand by you as well. And I do. So conversationofourgeneration.com/subscribe for that. And so let's go ahead now and dive into the quote of the week. And this one is from John Locke. And he says, "The end of law is not to abolish or restrain, but to preserve and enlarge freedom. For in all states of created beings capable of law, where there is no law, there is no freedom." This, I think, is an important thing that we have to recognize today in our culture that wants to do away with the laws of restriction in so many ways. We want to have porn free and everywhere, put everywhere. We don't want any laws against any sort of, you can put porn on TV at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, right? That's what we want as a culture. We want to liberate all of that, liberate all sorts of sexual freedoms, liberate all sorts of, drugs and all of those things. That's what we're so focused on as a society, is liberating all of these things and getting rid of all the law and just putting money in people's pockets that we print off of magic money printers. That's what we want to do, it seems like. And I think we think that's going to give us freedom. But really, those sorts of things, that unrestrained licentiousness, that unrestrained libertinism, is really enslaving. And I know I've talked about this in the past, and others are out there talking about this a lot right now. But when you just follow your passions, you're not actually free to rationally pursue happiness. And it's not going to make you happy either. That's the other thing, is hedonism and lustfulness and greed and those sorts of things are not going to fulfill you. That's not going to be what truly makes you happy. And you are supposed to be free to choose the good. And that means giving you some leeway to choose what's wrong and what's bad maybe at times, but it means that should be we should be restrained from forcing evil down people's throats. There is a restraint on that, right? We recognize that we should restrain people from murdering each other, raping each other, stealing from each other in large quantity, especially in large quantities at least. I think there is a kind of a socialistic idea right now that we can steal from the rich and give to the poor, but really we have these ideas at least that those sorts of things are wrong. And I think we're confused as to why one thing is wrong and another one that is wrong, why we think that's right or okay or something to be celebrated. And I think it's because we have a misunderstanding of what freedom is for, and that's to pursue good. And I think that as much as, John Locke is a liberal Enlightenment thinker, he is still fairly conservative in a lot of ways. He's fairly radical and novel for his time, but he's not like some of the Enlightenment thinkers were. That's for sure. He was not in the French Enlightenment sort of way. And I think there's also a sense that understanding people's time and place is helpful as well. And that he was also in a very turbulent time in England. And so John Locke was really, like I said, an influential Enlightenment thinker. He inspired our founding fathers in many ways, Jefferson and Madison, and not as much Hamilton, but many of the founding fathers pulled a lot of their ideas from John Locke. And he's often considered the father of liberalism in many ways. And his work has come up in other discussions recently. I think he came up in the conversation with Dr. Scott Yenor. He obviously came up a lot in my conversation with Brooke Medina this past Tuesday when we were discussing property rights and government involvement in economic systems. And she's from the Locke Foundation, so definitely came into play quite a bit there. And that's kind of what inspired me to review this as well. And so because he's top of mind, I just wanted to talk a little bit about this idea, and I wanted to discuss two treatises on government. It's been a while since I dove into it. I listened to it on audiobook probably 2 years ago now, at least, maybe 2.5, 3 years. And I think, wow, it has been probably 3 years now that I think about it, at least. So it's been a while, but it really did a good job of, in my opinion, arguing against what he was really arguing against is the divine right of kings. And it's because he's coming at a time when Charles II was not the best king. There was a lot of tumult and tumultuousness in the British political system at the time. And John Locke was in the mix of that. And after I can't remember which house it was, but basically Parliament sort of ousted the king and asserted their power again. There's kind of this ongoing thing since the Magna Carta between Parliament and kings trying to assert power back and forth. Even the different houses, the House of Lords and the House of Commons, trying to assert power back and forth and see who's going to rule. Is it going to be the monarch? Is it going to be sort of the aristocracy or the House of Lords, or the democracy, the House of Commons? And they had a good level of tension there between those different factions in their society that kept each other in check in a lot of ways. I mean, there were obviously excesses, but they did a good job of keeping each other in check. And so this is where two treatises of government comes from, is this tumultuous era that eventually leads to the Glorious Revolution. And once that happens, John Locke publishes this, two treatises on government. He's been working on it for a while at the time, and he publishes it because in the first treatise, what he does, like I said, he responds to an argument for the divine right of kings by Robert Filmer. It's called Patriarcha, and I haven't read that, so I need to go back and read that to see what he's responding to. That's one thing that has interested me. And I will say, just a side note, the audiobook that I listen to is fantastic because it is a British man reading it. And it's great because he has kind of this soft tone. And then when he is quoting Patriarcha, you can tell because he goes to this gruff, oh, and so, he's kind of reading along, and it's like, and government is here to do X, Y, and Z, and my opponent would say, dur, 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 and like that, it kind of goes into this voice like that, and it's hilarious. So I definitely recommend it. I'll see if I can find it, but it was quite entertaining, I will say, especially when you're listening to several hours of audiobook. But I really like this first one because he takes it seriously, and it's not. So the divine right of kings is something that I think is misunderstood, or it is. And by the way, yes, I am having a little bit of beer because I'm recording in the evening and, enjoying a little bit of that. So it's from Metazoa here in Indianapolis. So definitely check them out if you find them places. They have good beer. And I think that what he does well is he takes the argument seriously. But he's taking to task a pretty well-founded, I guess at least well-respected doctrine, and he doesn't do that lightly, I don't think, at least in the way he treats the other side. And that I think is important because when he's arguing in favor of more of a representative government, saying that he does argue, and this person, I think so to kind of give you a little bit of context on what Patriarcha says is that, really that Filmer argues that that all men are born slaves of a divinely ordained king. So that's a little bit of a problem as well. And basically so Locke does take him to task on that, but I don't think he definitely separates out this argument from maybe an argument in favor of monarchy, which is different, right? And so I think that idea of the born slaves really repulsed Locke. And as a Christian, I think what he was saying is we are all born, equal, we're all children of God and equal in this dignified way. We're not just born into the slavery of another man. There's nothing there that makes us that sort of a disequalness, doesn't give us that sort of a inequality. We might have inequality in other ways, but the right to just use other people is not something that is the case. And so he kind of tears down this argument of the divine right of kings, from at least the one that Filmer puts forth, and then he then goes on to argue and build a case for what he wants, which is representative government. And so the second treatise is a longer part of it, and it's a good description of what could replace the current British system as it was in his day. And he juxtaposes the state of nature and the state of war to start, saying that people enter into society in order to avoid a state of war. They want this peaceful way of living, and because we're fallen people, if you don't have some sort of society, some sort of structure, you are going to kind of fall into chaos in a way. And so then Locke discusses property rights, where they come from, explaining why they're important, why they should be defended and how to defend them through government means. And then after laying these out, he goes on to discuss his suitable form of government based on those two ideas, that we enter society for protection and for, not because we want to create this massive government to take care of us, but because we need to have a government of some sort or some sort of structure to protect us from predations of others. And that's what he is saying that we enter into society for. And he goes on, like I said, to discuss this suitable form of government and build up a vision of what is possible with that. And this writing is hugely influential in creating the American Constitution and the American founding. And so not only did he really help England in a way with this to recover from the Glorious Revolution and build back better, right? Build up their society again after a tumultuous and chaotic time. But he also laid forth a vision that paved the way for future nations in a huge way. And I think it's important too to recognize that right now, as I say, the Build Back Better and all of these slogans that we're hearing, there are people who have a vision for how we come out of this tumultuous time. And they have built up their vision and put it forth and messaged it and are working hard to bring that about. And I don't think it's a good vision. And so we need to make sure that those of us who want liberty, who want real justice, who want a good society and one that uses law to expand freedom, right? Restrict us in the right ways to expand freedom. People who want that, who want to be able to pursue good in their lives and happiness in the right and virtuous way, we need to put forth a vision that allows for that. We need to put forth a vision that is real and reasonable to our time, to where people are, and explain to them why they should move towards something different. And I think we can learn from Locke both how to criticize the current system and how to criticize government effectively, and not with ad hominems or other fallacies, or with just sloganeering and all of the normal things that we see today because of our soundbite media. But how can we criticize it in a meaningful way and show where they're going wrong and why it's wrong and how it can be corrected? That's what we need to be doing in a meaningful way that builds up, that is criticizing out of, like I said, patriotism, out of love for our country, because we want it to be better, right? You don't criticize your children because you hate them. You criticize them because you love them. You know that you need to correct them and get them back on the right path. And so while it might sting, while it might hurt sometimes to hear hard truths, we have to tell people those. And we need to be telling our officials those hard truths about what we want and why they're going in the wrong direction. But we need to do it in a way that makes it easy for them to receive those ideas as well, because people aren't going to listen to you when you call them a jackass in the process, right? You have to do it in a way that gets across your message effectively, truthfully, and maybe even bluntly, but without hitting them over the head with it or attacking them in the process. That's what we need to be doing, and that's what I think we can learn from Two Treatises on Government by John Locke, and why I think you should be reading this book. So there's links in the show notes for you to check out the book. You can also, there's going to be a banner there. I now have a sponsor, which is Books A Million, and there's going to be a banner in the show notes, link as well. So definitely go there to check out their books and shop through them. You know, if you don't want to, I know Amazon has all the things, so I get why people might want to support, or not support Amazon, but might want to buy things through Amazon for convenience sake. But if you want to support another company that, as far as I know so far, is not banning books. In fact, I saw they had a sale on Dr. Seuss books recently. So they were pushing that out there as a promotion. So if you're looking for a company that's, as far as I know, not censoring books, they may not have everything, but it doesn't seem like it's out of a censorious mentality. It's because it's a smaller company than Amazon, right? Amazon just has everything. So definitely check out Books A Million. There's a banner in the show notes. Check that out. And furthermore, head on over to Conversation of Our Generation /subscribe in order to get subscribed for $5 a month to get access to all the premium content, access to the community on Discord, and a copy of my book, as well as access to any future premium content coming down the pike as well. And then if you just want to keep up with what's going on in the Conversation of Our Generation, head over to conversationofourgeneration.com/newsletter to find out more. Subscribe to the podcast and on YouTube, and make sure that you leave a good rating and review, comment on YouTube. Those sorts of things really help boost this in the algorithms. And that covers all of those announcements. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Conversation of Our Generation. Let's get the dialogue going. I'll talk to you next time.